French Louisiana was supposed to be a paradise. At least that's what people in Paris were told. Newspapers painted a picture of lush forests, tropical heat, rich soils, and rivers just waiting to make France wealthy. And they didn't hesitate to use big biblical language either. They called it a new Eden, a fresh start in a land overflowing with promise. But, well, you can probably guess where this is going. Because when the first settlers actually arrived, what they found was not Eden, not even close. New Orleans was basically a muddy clearing surrounded by swamps, a few wooden huts, mosquitoes thick enough to turn the air into soup. And if the insects didn't get you, the floods, hunger, or disease probably would. The population in 1718 was so tiny, you could count it in hundreds, not thousands. That's not a colony, that's a desperate experiment. France needed people, quickly. They needed farms, labor, trade, anything to justify the cost of holding on to this stretch of land wedged between Spanish territories and the English colonies. And so, the Crown began promoting Louisiana with the same optimism you see in modern get-rich-quick schemes. Free land, huge profits, a new life. Just sign your name, pack your things, and trust us, it'll be fine. But almost no one volunteered because everyone had heard the rumors, and those rumors were true. This is where John Law enters the story, and trust me, he's one of the most unlikely figures in French history. A Scottish gambler, a convicted killer, a man who fled Britain after a duel ended badly, and somehow convinced the French government that he was a financial genius, which in a strange way, he actually was. In 1717, he created the Company of the West, basically Europe's first major stock market, and his plan sounded brilliant. Sell shares in Louisiana, use the profits to pay France's national debt, and let investors get rich as the colony began producing tobacco, sugar, and anything else it could squeeze from the land. It worked beautifully. On paper, rich families bought shares, servants bought shares, soldiers bought shares. People sold their furniture just to buy more shares. Suddenly, Louisiana, this place nobody wanted to go to, became the hottest property in the world. But there was one enormous problem. You can't build a profitable colony out of thin air. You need settlers, you need farms, you need exports. And Louisiana had none of that. So the French government made a decision that would shape thousands of lives, especially the lives of women who never asked to be part of this plan. At first, officials kept begging people to volunteer. Come to America, build a new life. But when that failed, they shifted to a harsher strategy: forced deportation. By late 1718, police patrols called bandoliers began sweeping through Paris. Anyone without proof of employment could be arrested. The homeless, petty criminals, beggars, even orphans, all marched to the docks and loaded onto ships. In January 1719, a royal decree officially legalized this. Overnight, Louisiana became a penal colony, a dumping ground for France's poor and unwanted. And within that wave of deportations came a group who endured something even stranger and in many ways even more tragic: women. Louisiana had almost no women at all. Most of the population was male, soldiers, convicts, laborers, and the French authorities believed they needed wives, families, and morality if the colony was going to survive. Which sounds noble, right? Except their solution was to round up women they considered suitable for export. That meant prostitutes, petty offenders, women who'd ever been under police supervision, or simply women with no family to protect them. John Law himself visited the Salpêtrière, a vast institution in Paris that housed poor women, orphans, and those considered socially undesirable. He chose a group described as of good character, though that phrase meant little. Many had no say in the matter. They were simply told they were to be married and shipped across the Atlantic. And here is where the story takes a surreal turn. These women were paired with male convicts, future husbands they had never met. A mass wedding ceremony was staged with 184 couples married in one enormous event. Imagine that, married by decree. No courtship, no choice, no chance to object. And after the ceremony, they were chained together and marched through Paris. People filled the streets, watching the procession as though it were some kind of parade. Some accounts say the women wore yellow ribbons. Some say they sang. Others cried out to lovers or priests as they passed by. And the whole thing became a joke in Paris. A cruel song spread through the streets. There are no prostitutes left in Paris. They've all gone to Mississippi. Their ship was named La Mutine, the Mutinous One, a fitting title for a voyage filled with hunger, sickness, and deaths along the way. Some women tried to escape, most failed, and those who survived the crossing arrived in a colony barely hanging on. Life in Louisiana was brutal. The air was thick with heat and insects. Settlements were tiny outposts surrounded by wilderness. Men outnumbered women 10 to 1, which created enormous tension. In some places, when two men wanted to marry the same woman, officers settled the argument by throwing dice. That's how desperate things were. Many marriages collapsed within weeks. Others were violent, and many women with no protection, no money, and no community turned to prostitution simply to survive. The French attempt at creating moral order had fallen apart almost immediately. It had been a fantasy. But while Louisiana crumbled, France itself was entering its own chaos. Law's financial system kept ballooning. Share prices soared beyond reason. People quit their jobs to trade stock. One nobleman actually ran through the streets shouting that he'd become a millionaire overnight. And then, as these things do, everything collapsed. In May of 1720, the French regent suddenly halved the value of Mississippi Company stock. Panic struck like lightning. Investors stormed the offices. People trampled one another trying to sell. Fortunes evaporated in days. And John Law, once the most powerful man in France, fled the country disguised as a woman, a final irony in a story filled with them. With the company bankrupt, deportations stopped instantly. No more police raids, no more forced marriages, no more ships full of unwilling settlers. France quietly abandoned the entire scheme, hoping people would forget what had happened. But memory has a way of surviving, even when governments wish it wouldn't. A decade later in 1731, a novel called Menolesco turned the story of deported women into a tragic romance, a love story set in New Orleans. It was banned for being immoral, but people devoured it anyway. And while the book romanticized the experience, the real women who lived through it left far quieter, harsher testimonies. Some of these women, amazingly, refused to be defined by the cruelty done to them. Marie Baron became one of the earliest landowners in New Orleans. Françoise Renaud opened a little trading post on the riverbanks. Marguerite Simonette worked as a midwife, helping deliver children into a world she herself had been forced into. All three had been judged expendable back in France, yet they became true founders of the colony, not by choice, but through endurance. And that's the strangest part of this whole story. The colony France advertised as a paradise, the colony they populated through kidnapping, forced marriage, and reckless financial gambling, only survived because the very people they tried to throw away refused to break. These weren't adventurers chasing opportunity. They were the unwanted, the forgotten, the condemned. And they built something anyway, not a paradise, just a fragile foothold at the edge of a swamp, but real, human, lasting. The New Eden was a lie, but the resilience born inside it was very real. And that's how the foundations of New Orleans were laid. Not by kings, generals, or businessmen, but by the desperate, the exiled, and the women who refused to disappear.